I never thought I'd spend my 67th birthday wiping blood off my face while sitting at my own dining table. The wine glass shattered against my cheekbone before I even registered what Derek had done. Red liquid mixed with red blood, dripping down onto the white tablecloth my late wife Caroline had embroidered by hand 20 years ago. Derek stood over me, his face twisted with rage, screaming that maids must obey their masters. My daughter Emma sat frozen across from me, her fork suspended halfway to her mouth, saying absolutely nothing. The pain in my face was nothing compared to the pain in my chest as I sat there in silence, pressing a napkin against the cut. How had I arrived at this moment? How had my life, once so full of love and dignity, crumbled into this nightmare? 6 months earlier, my world had collapsed when Caroline lost her battle with cancer. 42 years of marriage ended in a sterile hospital room at 3 a.m. She was my everything. My partner, my best friend, the person who made every day worth living. We built a beautiful life together. I ran a successful accounting firm that I sold 5 years ago when we decided to enjoy our retirement. We traveled, we volunteered at the library together, we hosted family dinners in the home where we raised Emma. After Caroline passed, the house felt enormous and empty. Every room held memories that both comforted and destroyed me. Her reading glasses still sat on the nightstand. Her gardening gloves hung by the back door. I couldn't bring myself to move anything. It felt like erasing her. Emma called me every day those first few weeks. She was worried about me, she said. A man my age shouldn't be alone in such a big house, grieving by himself. It wasn't healthy. She and Derek wanted to help. They suggested moving in temporarily, just until I got back on my feet emotionally. I was so grateful, so desperate for family, for connection, for anything to fill the crushing loneliness. I said yes immediately. They moved in the following weekend. At first, it felt right. Emma cooked meals, and we ate together like we used to when she was young. Derek seemed attentive, asking about my day, showing interest in the stories I told about Caroline. For a few weeks, I felt less alone. Then things started changing. Small things at first. Derek mentioned he was thinking about leaving his job at the car dealership. The commute was long, he said, and the stress was affecting his health. With them staying at my place rent-free, he could afford to take some time off and figure out his next move. Emma supported the decision. She even cut back her hours as a dental hygienist to spend more time at home. I told myself this was fine. Families help each other. Caroline would have wanted me to support our daughter and her husband during a difficult transition. The financial request started small. Could I help with their car payment this month? Just this once, until Derek found a new job. Of course I could. Then it was a credit card bill. They'd overspent during the holidays, just needed a little help catching up. No problem. Then Derek had a business opportunity, an investment that would pay off big. He just needed $5,000 to get started. I wrote the check. The business never materialized. The money was never repaid. And Derek never looked for another job. Instead, the dynamic in the house shifted in ways I didn't want to acknowledge. Derek started making comments about me being retired and useless, while he was still in his prime, still contributing to society. Never mind that he wasn't contributing anything except dirty dishes and attitude. Then came the orders. Could I throw in a load of his laundry while I was doing mine? Could I pick up groceries since I had nothing else to do all day? Could I make dinner tonight because Emma was tired? Each request seemed reasonable in isolation, but they accumulated like snow, until I found myself buried under the weight of them. 3 months into their stay, I was cooking every meal, doing all the cleaning, all the laundry, all the shopping. I was essentially running a bed and breakfast for 2 adults who treated me like hired help rather than family. I tried to talk to Emma about it once. She got defensive immediately. She said I was being ungrateful, that they were sacrificing their privacy and independence to keep me company. She said if I wanted them to leave, they would, but she thought I'd appreciate having family around after losing Mom. The guilt crushed me. She was right, wasn't she? I should be grateful. I was alone, and they were keeping me company. Maybe I was being selfish, too focused on the inconvenience, and not appreciative enough of their presence. So I stopped complaining. I did what they asked. And I told myself it was temporary, that eventually Derek would find work and they'd move into their own place. But Derek never looked for work, and the requests became demands. The dinner where Derek threw the glass at me was supposed to be special. I spent the entire day preparing Caroline's recipes, trying to recreate the family dinners she used to host. Roasted chicken with herbs, creamy mashed potatoes, green beans with almonds, homemade rolls, and apple pie with vanilla ice cream. I set the table with Caroline's good china, the set we received as a wedding gift and only used for holidays. I lit candles. I put on soft music. I wanted so badly to feel close to Emma again, to remember what family was supposed to feel like. Derek arrived at the table already half drunk. He'd been drinking beer in the garage all afternoon while I cooked. He sat down, looked at the food, and immediately started criticizing. The chicken was too dry. The potatoes needed more salt. The green beans were overcooked. Nothing was good enough. Emma said nothing. She just ate quietly, avoiding eye contact with me. I swallowed my disappointment and served them, playing the role they'd assigned me. When Derek's wine glass emptied, he held it out to me without looking up from his plate. More, he said. Not please. Not a request. A command. I was tired. Bone-tired from cooking all day, heart-tired from months of being diminished in my own home, and something inside me finally resisted. I think you've had enough for tonight, Derek, I said quietly. His head snapped up. What did you say? I said I think you've had enough wine. There's water and iced tea if you'd like something else. The explosion happened so fast. Derek's face turned purple with rage. He stood up, knocking his chair backward. He grabbed his wine glass and hurled it directly at my face with full force. The impact was shocking. Glass shattered against my cheekbone. Wine and blood mixed together, running down my face and neck, soaking into my shirt. I sat there stunned, unable to process what had just happened. Derek leaned over the table, his face inches from mine, and screamed, "Maids must obey their masters. You don't tell me what I can and can't have in my own house." His house. He actually called it his house. I looked at Emma, waiting for her to say something, to defend me, to show any sign of the daughter I raised. She stared at her plate, her face pale, her hands trembling, but she said nothing. I pressed my napkin against the cut on my face and stood up slowly. I walked to the bathroom, locked the door, and looked at myself in the mirror. Blood dripped from a gash on my cheekbone. My eye was already starting to swell. But worse than the physical pain was the look in my own eyes. I barely recognized the broken man staring back at me. I cleaned the wound as best I could, applied butterfly bandages from the first aid kit, and stood there wondering how my life had become this. I woke the next morning with the left side of my face swollen and purple. The cut throbbed with each heartbeat. I should have gone to the hospital, but I couldn't bear the shame of explaining what happened. What would I say? That my son-in-law assaulted me in my own home? That my daughter watched and did nothing? I got dressed slowly, each movement reminding me of the violence from the night before. When I came downstairs, Derek was sprawled across the sofa in his underwear, channel surfing and eating cereal directly from the box. Milk sat out on the counter, warm and going bad. Crumbs covered the coffee table. He glanced at my bruised face and looked away without comment. No apology. No acknowledgement. He simply pointed at his empty cereal bowl and said, "Make me eggs and bacon. I'm still hungry." I stood there, staring at this man who had assaulted me 12 hours earlier, now ordering me to cook for him as if nothing had happened. Part of me wanted to refuse, to scream, to throw him out of my house, but a bigger part of me was simply tired. Too tired to fight. I was turning toward the kitchen when Emma emerged from the bedroom. She saw my face, bruised and swollen, and I waited for her reaction. This was my daughter. Surely seeing her father injured would spark something in her, some maternal instinct, some basic human decency. She sighed. Actually sighed, like I was inconveniencing her. "Dad, you really shouldn't provoke Derek when he's been drinking. You know how he gets." The words hit harder than the glass had. My own daughter was blaming me for being assaulted in my own home. She was excusing her husband's violence and making it my fault. "Emma," I said quietly. He threw a glass at my face. "And you embarrassed him in front of me by refusing to serve him wine. What did you expect?" What did I expect? I expected my daughter to be outraged that her husband had hurt her father. I expected her to demand Derek apologize, to insist he get help for his drinking and anger. I expected her to be the person I raised her to be, but that person was gone. Or maybe she'd never existed, and I'd been too blinded by love to see who Emma really was. I made Derek his eggs and bacon. I cleaned up his mess. And I said nothing. Over the next few days, things got worse. Derek started inviting friends over without asking. Random people I'd never met would show up at all hours, treating my home like a free bar and restaurant. They'd eat everything in the refrigerator, leave trash everywhere, and make crude jokes about the old man while I cleaned up after them. One of Derek's friends, a heavyset man named Tyler, who smelled like motor oil and cigarettes, seemed to take particular pleasure in tormenting me. He'd call me Jeeves and snap his fingers when he wanted another beer. He'd put his feet on Caroline's antique coffee table and laugh when I asked him to remove them. "What are you going to do about it, old man?" he'd say. "This ain't even your house anymore. You're just the help." Derek would laugh. Emma would stay in the bedroom, pretending not to hear. I endured it all in silence, telling myself it couldn't last forever. Eventually, they'd have to leave. Eventually, things would change. One evening, I gathered my courage and asked to speak with Emma privately. We sat in the kitchen, and I tried to reach whatever part of my daughter might still exist beneath this stranger's face. "Emma, sweetheart, I'm really uncomfortable with how things have been going. Derek's friends, the drinking, the way everyone treats me. I think it might be time for you two to start looking for your own place." Her face hardened immediately. "Are you serious right now? We gave up our apartment to come take care of you because you were a mess after Mom died. We've been here for you, supporting you, and this is how you repay us? Supporting me? Emma, I cook every meal, I clean up after everyone, I pay for everything. How is that you supporting me? We're keeping you company. Do you have any idea how depressing it is, living with an old man who does nothing but mope around about his dead wife? We're doing you a favor." The cruelty of her words took my breath away. Caroline wasn't just my wife. She was Emma's mother. And Emma was talking about her like she was an inconvenience, a source of depression rather than a person worth mourning. "If you make us leave," Emma continued, her voice cold, "you'll never see me again. Is that what you want? To lose your daughter on top of losing Mom? To be completely alone?" She knew exactly what she was doing. She was weaponizing my greatest fear, using my loneliness against me like a club. "No," I whispered. "Of course not. Then stop complaining and be grateful you have family who cares enough to stay." I apologized. I actually apologized for setting a boundary, for asking to be treated with basic respect in my own home. And I hated myself for it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m, I got up to use the bathroom and heard voices coming from Emma and Derek's bedroom. The door was slightly open, and I could hear them talking. I should have walked away. But something made me stop and listen. Derek was laughing. "Your old man is so pathetic. He'll do anything we want as long as we dangle you in front of him like a carrot. Watch him jump. Watch him cook. Watch him clean. It's hilarious." Emma laughed too. Actually laughed. "I know," she said. "He's always been weak. My mom wore the pants in that marriage. Now that she's gone, he's completely lost. He has no idea what to do with himself." "We should have him sign the house over to you," Derek said, "for estate planning purposes. Tell him it'll save on taxes when he dies or something. Old people fall for that kind of thing. Once the house is in your name, we can stick him in some cheap nursing home and sell this place. It's got to be worth 700 or 800 grand. "That's actually a good idea," Emma said. "We could probably get him to do it in the next few weeks if we play it right." They continued planning my future like I was a problem to be solved, an obstacle to be removed. My daughter and her husband were plotting to steal my home and warehouse me in a facility so they could profit from my life's work. I stood in the dark hallway, my hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound, and felt something inside me die. The last shred of hope I'd been clinging to, the belief that Emma loved me even a little bit, shattered completely. My daughter saw me as nothing but a resource to exploit, and once I had nothing left to give, I'd be discarded like garbage. I went back to my room, but I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, thinking about Caroline, about the life we built, about the daughter we raised with so much love and hope, and I wondered where we went wrong. Morning came, but I felt like I was moving through a fog. I went through the motions of making breakfast, but I was numb. The world felt muted, distant, like I was watching my life happen to someone else. Derek came downstairs around 10, scratching himself and yawning. He looked at the eggs and toast I'd prepared and wrinkled his nose. I don't want eggs today. Make me pancakes. And bacon. And I want fresh orange juice, not that carton stuff. He spoke to me the way someone might speak to a misbehaving dog. No please, no thank you, no acknowledgement that I was a human being deserving of basic courtesy. For the first time since they moved in, I looked Derek directly in the eye and said, "No." He blinked, confused. "What?" "No, I won't be doing that." Derek's face flushed red. "What did you just say to me?" I said, "No. I'm not making you pancakes. I'm not washing your truck. I'm not doing your laundry. I'm done being your servant." Derek stepped close to me, using his size to intimidate. He was a big man, 6 feet 2 inches, and probably 220 pounds. He towered over my 5'9" frame. "You want me to throw another glass at your face, old man? Or maybe something heavier this time? Maybe that coffee pot right there?" I didn't flinch. Something had fundamentally changed inside me during the night. I'd lost everything already. My wife was dead. My daughter had chosen greed over love. What else could they take from me that mattered? "Do what you want, Derek, but I won't be your servant anymore." Derek raised his hand, his fist clenched, and I saw real violence in his eyes. But before he could strike, Emma rushed in and grabbed his arm. "Derek, stop. Not now." She wasn't protecting me out of love. I could see it in her face. She was protecting the plan. If Derek seriously injured me, if police or hospitals got involved, their scheme to steal the house would be jeopardized. She needed me functional long enough to sign away my property. Emma pulled Derek into their bedroom and closed the door. I could hear them arguing in harsh whispers. Then Emma came back out alone and approached me with a completely different demeanor. Her eyes were wet with manufactured tears. "Dad, I'm so sorry about Derek. He's under so much stress right now. He doesn't mean to be harsh. He just feels like a failure because he's not working, and he takes it out on the people closest to him." She was good. I had to give her that. If I hadn't overheard their conversation the night before, I might have believed her. "I know you've been doing a lot around here, and we really appreciate it. Things are going to change soon. Derek has some job interviews lined up. We'll be out of your hair before you know it. Can you just be patient a little bit longer? For me?" She touched my arm, looking up at me with those eyes that used to melt my heart when she was a little girl asking for ice cream before dinner. "Please, Dad. I love you." I said nothing. I just nodded and walked away. That afternoon, while Derek and Emma went shopping using my credit card, I sat alone in my home office. Caroline's photo sat on my desk in a silver frame. She was laughing in the picture, her head thrown back in genuine joy. We'd been on a cruise to Alaska. It was one of the happiest weeks of our lives. I picked up the photo and traced her face with my finger. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm sorry I let this happen. I'm sorry I was too weak to protect what we built. I'm sorry our daughter became this." And then I imagined what Caroline would say if she could see what was happening. She was always the stronger one, the one with the spine of steel beneath her gentle exterior. She wouldn't have tolerated this for 5 minutes. I thought about my entire life. 42 years building an accounting firm from nothing, working 70-hour weeks in the early years, sacrificing and saving, providing for my family. Caroline and I put Emma through college without loans. We gave her every advantage, every opportunity. And this was what it came to. Being assaulted in my own home by a worthless man while my daughter plotted to rob me. No. Something crystallized in my mind. A clarity I hadn't felt in months. I wasn't dead yet. I wasn't helpless. I still had options, resources, agency. I'd spent months being passive, accepting abuse because I was afraid of losing Emma. But I'd already lost her. The daughter I loved didn't exist anymore, if she ever had. I opened my laptop and sent an email to Gerald Martinez, my estate attorney and friend of 30 years. I requested an urgent meeting for the following morning. Then I called Walter Chen, my real estate agent, someone I'd known for 2 decades. I told him I wanted to sell my house, and I wanted it done quickly and quietly. Walter was surprised. "Barnett, are you sure? This is a big decision. This is the house where you and Caroline raised Emma." "I'm sure," I said. "How fast can you make this happen?" "Well, the market's hot right now. A property like yours? In this neighborhood? I actually have a client who's been looking for exactly this kind of house. Corporate executive relocating from California. If you're serious, I could probably have an offer by tomorrow. Do it. Barnett, can I ask what's going on? I'll explain later. For now, just trust me. I need this done fast. Okay. I'll make some calls. After I hung up, I spent the rest of the afternoon going through my files. I gathered every document I'd need. The deed to the house, financial records, account statements, proof of all the money Derek and Emma had taken from me over the past 6 months. I made a list of everything they'd borrowed or charged to my credit cards. The total came to $62,400. In 6 months, they'd drained that much from me, and not a penny had been repaid. I worked methodically, with a calmness that surprised me. For months, I'd been drowning in grief and fear, but now I had a purpose. I was taking control of my life again. When Derek and Emma came home that evening, loaded down with shopping bags full of clothes they'd bought with my money, they found me sitting calmly at the kitchen table reading a book. Emma showed me a designer purse that cost $400. Derek had new shoes, new jeans, new shirts. They didn't thank me. They just tossed the bags aside and demanded dinner. I stood up, made a simple dinner of pasta and salad, served them, and quietly excused myself to my bedroom. Derek and Emma exchanged satisfied looks. They thought they'd won. They thought I was completely broken, totally submissive, ready to be molded into whatever shape they needed. They had no idea what was coming. I woke before sunrise, my mind sharp and clear for the first time in months. I dressed in one of the suits I used to wear to work, a charcoal gray that Caroline always said made me look distinguished. I knotted my tie carefully, polished my shoes, and looked at myself in the mirror. The bruise on my face had faded to a yellowish green. The cut was healing. But more importantly, I recognized the man looking back at me. Not the broken, servile person I'd become, but someone who still had dignity, who still had fight left in him. I left before Derek and Emma woke up, drove to a coffee shop, and arrived at Gerald's office exactly at 9. Gerald greeted me with concern the moment he saw my face. Barnett, what happened to you? That's part of what I need to talk to you about. We sat in his office, and I told him everything. The manipulation, the financial exploitation, the abuse, the overheard conversation about stealing my house. Gerald listened with growing horror. Barnett, I've known Emma since she was born. I watched Caroline bring her to the office when she was a baby. I cannot believe she'd do this to you. I couldn't either. But I heard them, Gerald. They were planning to have me sign the house over and then put me in a nursing home. Gerald's jaw tightened. Over my dead body. We're going to protect your assets, and we're going to do it right now. We spent 2 hours going over my options. Gerald drafted new estate documents, removing Emma as beneficiary and executor. He prepared a formal eviction notice for Derek and Emma. He outlined the legal protections I needed to put in place. The good news is, they have no legal claim to your property, Gerald said. They're not tenants. They have no lease. They've paid no rent. You can evict them with minimal notice. If they resist, we get a court order. I don't want this to drag out, I said. I want them gone as quickly as possible. Then sell the house. Once it closes, they have to leave whether they want to or not. From Gerald's office, I drove to meet Walter at a coffee shop downtown. He had a folder full of documents waiting for me. I spoke to my clients last night, Walter said. The Andersons. They're very interested. I showed them photos of your place, and they're ready to make an offer. But Barnett, they want to move fast. He starts his new job in 3 weeks. How fast? They'll pay cash. No financing, no inspections, no contingencies. They want the house, as is, furnished. They could close in 2 weeks if you're willing. My house, the home where I'd lived for 38 years, where I'd raised my daughter and grown old with my wife, sold in 2 weeks to strangers. It should have hurt more than it did, but all I felt was relief. What kind of offer are we talking about? Walter slid a paper across the table. $760,000. It was more than fair. In this market, it was actually generous. Tell them yes, I said. Barnett, are you absolutely sure? Once we start this process, it's hard to stop. And what about Emma? Where will she and Derek go? That's not my problem anymore. Draw up the papers. Walter studied my face, then nodded. Okay. I'll have the purchase agreement ready for your signature this afternoon. From the coffee shop, I went to my bank. The branch manager, a woman named Susan, who'd handled my accounts for 15 years, welcomed me into her office. Susan, I need to make some changes to my accounts. Of course, Barnett. What can I help you with? I want to move everything to a different bank. Today, she blinked. Everything? Barnett, you have multiple accounts with us. Checking, savings, investment accounts, your IRA. That's a lot to move. I know, but I need it done. It took 3 hours. But by the time I left, I'd transferred every dollar I had to a new bank across town. New checking account, new savings account, everything. I also canceled the credit cards Derek had been using. I reported them as lost and requested new ones with different numbers to be sent to a post office box I'd rented that morning. My final stop was at a property management company. I rented a small furnished apartment, a one-bedroom place about 4 miles from my house. It was simple, clean, and available immediately. I signed a 6-month lease and paid the first and last month's rent plus deposit. Then I hired a moving company to come in 5 days. They'd pack and remove my personal belongings while Derek and Emma were out. Everything that mattered to me, all of Caroline's things, the photos, the mementos, my clothes and books, would go into storage until I was ready to sort through them. By the time I drove home that evening, I'd dismantled their entire scheme. The house was sold, the money was protected, my belongings would soon be removed, and I had a new place to live. Derek was waiting when I walked in. He was angry. Why aren't my credit cards working? I tried to buy beer, and they were all declined. I noticed some fraudulent charges. I lied smoothly. I had to cancel them for security. New ones will arrive in 7 to 10 business days. Derek's face turned red. 7 to 10 days? What am I supposed to do until then? I don't know, Derek. Maybe get a job? He stepped toward me aggressively. What did you just say? I pulled out my wallet and handed him 2 20s. It was all the cash I had on me. Here. This should be enough for beer. Derek snatched the money without thanks and stormed out. Emma came out of the bedroom. Dad, what's going on? Why did you cancel the credit cards? Just a security precaution. Nothing to worry about. She studied my face suspiciously, but I kept my expression neutral. After a moment, she shrugged and went back to her room. That night, Walter called. Barnett, I have good news. The Andersons accepted your asking price. $760,000, cash, 15-day closing. They're wiring their earnest money tomorrow. This is really happening. Good, I said. Thank you, Walter. Are you okay? You sound different. I am different. For the first time in months, I feel like myself again. The next morning, I signed the purchase agreement electronically. The house where I'd spent most of my adult life, where I'd built a family and a life with Caroline, was sold. The closing was scheduled for 2 weeks from Thursday. I spent the following days quietly preparing. I went through the house, deciding what to keep and what to leave. Most of the furniture was Caroline's taste. Letting it go didn't hurt as much as I expected. What mattered were the irreplaceable things. Our wedding album, photos from Emma's childhood, Caroline's jewelry, the quilt Caroline's grandmother had made, my father's watch. The movers came on Wednesday while Derek and Emma were out at lunch. 3 men packed everything I'd marked in less than 4 hours. They took it all to a storage unit I'd rented across town. When Derek and Emma came home, they didn't notice anything missing. They spent their lives on their phones and in front of the television. They had no idea that the family photos no longer hung on the walls, that my clothes no longer filled the closet, that Caroline's things were gone. Derek announced he was having a party that weekend. 10 people, he said. He told me to stock up on food and alcohol. I smiled and said, Of course. Emma looked relieved. She thought everything was back to normal, that I'd accepted my place as their servant. They had no idea that in 48 hours, their entire world would collapse. Thursday morning arrived clear and cold. I woke at 5, dressed carefully, and packed the last of my essential items into a suitcase that I put in my trunk. Derek and Emma were still asleep, and I was glad. I didn't want to see them before what was about to happen. I drove to Gerald's office where the closing was scheduled for 9. The Andersons were already there when I arrived, a pleasant couple in their early 40s. Richard Anderson was a software executive relocating from San Francisco. His wife, Margaret, was a teacher. They had 2 teenage children who were excited about moving to a house with a big backyard. "Mr. Barnett," Richard said, shaking my hand. "We're so grateful you're willing to sell to us on such short notice. This house is perfect for our family." "I'm glad it'll be loved," I said, and I meant it. These were good people. They'd take care of the house better than Derek and Emma ever would. The closing took 90 minutes. Papers were signed, funds were transferred, keys were exchanged. When it was done, I was no longer the owner of the home where I'd lived for 38 years. $760,000 sat in my new bank account, but the house belonged to the Andersons. Margaret Anderson touched my arm gently. "Mr. Barnett, the realtor mentioned you have family living in the house currently. We don't want to cause problems. Our contract gives us possession in 48 hours, but if you need more time to work things out, we can be flexible." "That won't be necessary," I said. "They'll be informed today. I expect they'll be gone within 24 hours. After the closing, I drove to a hardware store and had a copy of my old house key made. I'd need it to retrieve any remaining personal items I might have missed. Then I sat in my car in the parking lot and called Walter. "It's done," I said. "How do you feel?" "Free." "What happens now?" "Now I go tell them." I drove back to the house one final time as its former owner. Derek's truck was in the driveway. Emma's car was parked on the street. They were both home. I went inside and found Derek exactly where I expected him, on the sofa in his underwear, playing video games and surrounded by empty beer cans. Emma was in the kitchen on her phone, laughing at something on social media. Neither looked up when I entered. I went to my old home office and printed 2 documents Gerald had prepared. The first was a formal eviction notice, informing Derek and Emma that they had 24 hours to vacate the premises. The second was a copy of the deed showing that the house had been sold to Richard and Margaret Anderson. I put both documents in an envelope and walked to the front door. With clear packing tape, I sealed the envelope to the outside of the door where it couldn't be missed. Then I went to the kitchen and started packing food. Everything I'd purchased, everything in the pantry and refrigerator, I loaded into boxes and carried to my car. The expensive steaks Derek was planning to grill for his party, the craft beer he liked, the wine, the gourmet cheese, all of it. I was loading the 3rd box when Derek finally noticed. "What are you doing?" he called from the living room. "Just taking care of some things," I said calmly. He appeared in the kitchen doorway, suspicious. "Why are you taking food?" "Because I bought it." "What's that supposed to mean?" I didn't answer. I just kept packing. The coffee, the bread, the butter, the eggs, everything. Derek followed me outside as I loaded another box into my trunk. That's when Emma saw the envelope taped to the door. She tore it down and ripped it open. I watched her face go pale as she read. Her hands started shaking. "Dad," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "What is this? Is this some kind of joke?" I closed my trunk and turned to face them both. For the first time in 6 months, I stood tall. I looked Derek directly in the eye without fear. "It's not a joke, Emma. I sold the house. It closed this morning. The new owners take possession tomorrow. You have 24 hours to leave." The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Derek found his voice first. "You can't do this. This is my house." "No, Derek. It was my house. Now it belongs to the Andersons. You have no legal claim to this property. You're not a tenant. You have no lease. You've paid no rent. You're a guest, and I'm asking you to leave." "Asking?" Derek's face turned purple. "You think you can just throw me out?" He lunged toward me, hands outstretched, rage contorting his features. But I'd planned for this. Walter's car pulled up to the curb, and he stepped out along with a police officer I'd asked him to bring. The officer, a young man named Rodriguez, stepped between Derek and me. "Sir, I need you to step back right now." "This is bullshit. He can't kick me out." Officer Rodriguez's voice stayed calm but firm. "Sir, I've reviewed the documents. You have no legal right to this property. The owner has requested you leave. If you refuse, you'll be arrested for trespassing." Derek was screaming now, incoherent with rage, making threats he couldn't back up. But the officer's presence kept him from getting physical. Emma was crying. Real tears this time, not the manufactured ones she'd used to manipulate me. Dad, how could you do this to me? I'm your daughter. I looked at her, and my voice was sad but firm. You stopped being my daughter the day you let your husband assault me and called it my fault. You stopped being my daughter when you plotted to steal my home and put me in a facility. I heard you, Emma. I heard every word you and Derek said about me. Her face drained of all color. She realized I knew about their plan. Dad, I can explain. Derek was just talking. We would never actually do that. But you laughed, Emma. You laughed when he called me pathetic. You agreed that I was weak. You helped him plan how to rob me. Those aren't words that came from Derek alone. They came from you too. I didn't mean it. He influences me. I'm not thinking clearly when I'm with him. Maybe that's true. But that doesn't change what you've done. It doesn't change how you've treated me. I pulled an envelope from my pocket and handed it to her. Inside was a check for $2,000. This should be enough to get you into a motel and through the next few weeks. It's more than you deserve, but I'm not cruel. After this, you're on your own. Emma stared at the check, then at me. That's it? $2,000? After everything we've done for you? The delusion was stunning. Even now, even caught, she genuinely believed she'd done something for me rather than to me. What you've done for me, I said quietly, is show me exactly who you are. I gave you everything, Emma. I loved you unconditionally. But you chose this man over your own father. You chose greed over love. That was your choice. And now you live with the consequences. Derek was still screaming at the officer, threatening to sue, threatening to fight, threatening everything except actually leaving. I got in my car. Emma stood on the lawn, the eviction notice in one hand and my check in the other, sobbing. Derek continued his tantrum, but I didn't look back. I started the engine, pulled away from the curb, and drove toward my new apartment, toward my new life, toward freedom. The apartment was quiet when I walked in. Small, simple, furnished with generic furniture that held no memories. It should have felt lonely, but instead it felt peaceful, safe. I set my suitcase down and looked around. One bedroom, one bathroom, a small kitchen, a living area with a window overlooking a parking lot. Nothing special, but it was mine. And no one here would abuse me or take advantage of me. My phone started ringing almost immediately. Emma. I declined the call. She called again. And again. 12 times in the first hour. Then the text started. Dad, please answer. We need to talk. You can't just abandon your own daughter. Derek says he's going to sue you for illegal eviction. Fine, ignore me. See if I ever speak to you again. I turned my phone on silent and made myself a cup of tea. Through the window, I watched people coming and going from their apartments. Normal people living normal lives, not exploiting their elderly parents. Over the next few days, Emma's messages evolved. The anger phase passed, replaced by bargaining. Derek left me. He said there's no point staying with me if we can't get your house. I'm at a motel on Route 22. It's horrible here. I can't afford first and last month's rent on a decent apartment. I'm working double shifts, but it's not enough. Dad, please, I'm your daughter. Don't you care what happens to me? I read each message but didn't respond. Part of me ached to help her, to solve her problems the way I always had. But a wiser part knew that rescuing her now would teach her nothing. She needed to face the consequences of her choices. Gerald called with an update. Derek and Emma tried to challenge the sale. They claimed you were mentally incompetent and couldn't legally sell the house. And? I had you evaluated by a psychiatrist before the closing, remember? Dr. Morrison's report states you're completely sound of mind. Their challenge was dismissed within 2 hours. The judge was not impressed. Good. There's more. Apparently, they didn't leave the house voluntarily. The Andersons had to get a court order. When the sheriff went to enforce it, Derek had trashed the place, broke windows, punched holes in walls, destroyed some of the furniture. The Andersons are pressing charges. I felt a pang of guilt for the Andersons, but Gerald continued, "Don't worry about them. They have insurance, and Derek will likely face criminal charges. That's his problem now, not yours." I started rebuilding my life piece by piece. I reconnected with old friends I'd neglected during the months of abuse. I joined a grief support group for widowers at the community center. Talking about Caroline with people who understood loss was more healing than I'd expected. One of the men in the group, Frank Morrison, a retired engineer about my age, became a good friend. We started meeting for coffee every Tuesday morning. He'd lost his wife 3 years earlier and understood the specific loneliness of widowhood. The first year is survival, Frank told me. The second year is when you actually start grieving. The third year, you figure out who you are without them. It gets easier, but it never stops hurting. His honesty was refreshing. People usually fed me platitudes about time healing all wounds. Frank just told me the truth. I also started volunteering at the library where Caroline used to volunteer. The head librarian, a kind woman named Dorothy, remembered Caroline fondly. She had such a gift for connecting with children, Dorothy said. Storytime was magical when Caroline ran it. The kids adored her. Being in the library, continuing Caroline's legacy in a small way, made me feel close to her again, not in a painful way, but in a way that honored her memory. Frank and I discovered a shared interest in woodworking. We started a small project together, building birdhouses, to donate to the local nature center. Working with our hands, creating something useful and beautiful, was meditative. We'd work in comfortable silence for hours, only occasionally talking. About 3 weeks after I'd left the house, I received a letter. Not a text, not an email, but an actual handwritten letter on lined notebook paper. Emma's handwriting. Dear Dad, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I need to write it anyway. Derek left me the day after you kicked us out. Once the money was gone and the house was gone, he had no use for me. He moved in with some woman he'd been seeing on the side. I didn't even know about her. I'm living in a motel room that costs $210 a week. I'm working 50 hours at the dental office and picked up a weekend job waiting tables. I'm drowning in credit card debt that Derek ran up in my name. I can barely afford food after I pay for the room. But I'm not writing to ask for money. I know I don't deserve your help. I'm writing because I finally understand what I did to you. When Derek left, when I was suddenly alone and struggling and scared, I remembered how you looked after Mom died. That lost, devastated look in your eyes. And I realized that instead of helping you through the worst time of your life, I let Derek turn you into a servant. I let him abuse you. I participated in planning to rob you. I don't know what happened to me, Dad. I wish I could blame it all on Derek, but that would be a lie. The things I said about you, about Mom, those came from me. The cruelty, the manipulation, the greed, that was me too. I think I've always been selfish. Mom used to call me out on it when I was younger, but you never did. You always made excuses for me, always gave me what I wanted. I think you loved me so much that you couldn't see who I really was. Or maybe I became this person because it was so easy. Because I knew you'd let me get away with anything. Either way, it doesn't matter now. What matters is that I hurt you terribly, and I'm sorry. I know sorry isn't enough. I know I can't undo what I've done, but I needed you to know that I finally see it. I finally see what I am. I don't expect you to write back. I don't expect anything from you ever again. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, and that I hope you're okay. Love, Emma. I read the letter 3 times, sitting at my small kitchen table as the afternoon light faded. My first instinct was to call her, to tell her I forgave her, to send money, to fix her problems. But I didn't. Instead, I took the letter to my grief support group that evening and read it aloud. The responses were mixed. Some people thought I should forgive her. Others warned against being manipulated again. Frank said something that stuck with me. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or allowing abuse to continue. It means releasing the poison so it doesn't destroy you. You can forgive her without having a relationship with her. You can have compassion for her situation without rescuing her from it. That night I sat down and wrote Emma a letter back. Emma, I received your letter. I'm glad Derek is gone. You deserve better than a man who would use you and discard you. I want you to know that I cannot have a relationship with you right now. The trust is too broken, and the wounds are too fresh. What you and Derek did to me was deeply wrong, and it will take me a long time to heal from it. But I'm not a cruel person, and I don't wish suffering on you. If you truly want to rebuild your life and learn from this, I support that from a distance. However, I cannot be your safety net, and I cannot rescue you. You need to save yourself. You need to prove to yourself that you can overcome adversity through your own effort, not by exploiting someone who loves you. If, in time, you do the hard work of becoming someone I can trust again, perhaps we can cautiously rebuild a relationship. But that will take years, not weeks or months, and it will require you to prove through consistent actions, not words, that you've changed. I'm enclosing a check for $2,000. It's enough to help you get into a stable living situation, but it's not enough to solve all your problems. This is a one-time gift, not the beginning of financial support. What you do with your life from here is entirely up to you. I hope you find your way. I hope you learn and grow from this experience. And I hope someday you become the person I always believed you could be. But I cannot be part of that journey right now. I need to heal, and I need to rebuild my own life. Take care of yourself. Dad. I enclosed a check for $2,000, sealed the envelope, and mailed it the next morning. Then I let it go. I couldn't control what Emma did with her life. I could only control my own choices, my own healing, my own future. 6 months passed. The rhythm of my new life became comfortable, familiar. The apartment that once felt temporary now felt like home. I decorated it with photos of Caroline, pictures from our travels, memories of happier times. It wasn't a shrine to grief anymore. It was a celebration of love. Frank and I had developed a solid friendship. We met 3 times a week now, sometimes for woodworking, sometimes just for coffee and conversation. We'd built over 30 birdhouses, and the nature center was thrilled with our donations. We were planning a fishing trip for the following month. The grief support group remained an important part of my life. Helping others who were navigating loss gave me purpose. I'd become a mentor of sorts to newer members, offering the perspective that only time and experience can provide. I'd also started writing. Nothing fancy, just stories about my life with Caroline. Our first date, our wedding day, the trips we took, the quiet Sunday mornings reading the paper together. I wasn't planning to publish them. They were for me, a way to keep Caroline alive in my heart and mind. I received monthly cards from Emma, just as I'd asked for in my letter. She never asked for money or favors. She simply updated me on her life. She'd moved into a small apartment. She was still working 2 jobs, but had paid off half her credit card debt. She'd started therapy to understand why she'd made the choices she made. I read each card but didn't respond. The wounds were healing, but slowly. I wasn't ready yet. One afternoon in early autumn, I was volunteering at the library when a young woman approached me. She was a college student, maybe 22 or 23, researching family dynamics for a sociology project. "Excuse me, sir," she said politely. "I'm interviewing people about their experiences with family relationships. Would you be willing to share your story?" My first instinct was to decline. But something about her earnest expression and genuine curiosity reminded me of why I'd started volunteering in the first place, to honor Caroline's legacy of helping others. "All right," I said. "Let's talk." We sat in the library cafe with coffee, and I told her everything. The loss of Caroline, the manipulation by Derek and Emma, the abuse, the overheard conversation, the decision to sell the house, and the aftermath. She listened with tears in her eyes, taking notes, but mostly just being present. When I finished, she asked, "Do you regret it? Cutting your daughter off like that?" I considered the question carefully. I don't think of it as cutting her off. I think of it as saving myself. For 6 months, I set myself on fire to keep her warm, and she just complained I wasn't burning bright enough. At some point, you have to choose yourself, even when it's your own child. "But you still sent her money," she observed. I did. Because there's a difference between boundaries and cruelty. I won't let her destroy me, but I don't wish destruction on her either. I hope she finds her way. I just can't be the one to carry her there. The student leaned forward. "What would you say is the most important thing you learned from all of this?" I thought about Caroline, about the life we built together, about the daughter we raised who lost her way, and about the man I'd become on the other side of this nightmare. I learned that love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's self-destruction. Real love requires mutual respect and reciprocity. When someone takes and takes and takes without giving anything back, that's not a relationship. That's exploitation. I learned that being a good father doesn't mean sacrificing your dignity and self-worth. It means modeling what healthy relationships look like, even if that means walking away from unhealthy ones. Children learn more from what we do than what we say. By allowing Emma and Derek to abuse me, I was teaching them that was acceptable behavior. I learned that loneliness after loss makes you vulnerable. Grief is a wound, and wounded animals are easy prey. I let my fear of being alone make me accept the unacceptable. I let my desperation for family connection blind me to how I was being treated. But most importantly, I learned that it's never too late to choose yourself. I'm 67 years old. I could have told myself I was too old to start over, too tired to fight back. Instead, I discovered I had more strength than I knew. Strength to set boundaries. Strength to let go. Strength to rebuild. Caroline used to say, "People treat you the way you teach them to treat you." I taught Derek and Emma they could abuse me. By accepting that abuse, when I finally taught them differently, everything changed. I also learned that justice doesn't always look like revenge. It looks like protection. I didn't sell the house to punish Emma. I sold it to save myself. The fact that it had consequences for her was simply cause and effect. And finally, I learned that forgiveness and reconciliation aren't the same thing. I can forgive Emma for what she did while still protecting myself from further harm. Forgiveness is about freeing myself from bitterness. It's about not carrying poison in my heart. But reconciliation requires trust, and trust must be earned over time through changed behavior. I don't know if Emma and I will ever have a relationship again. Maybe someday, if she truly changes and proves it through years of consistent action, or maybe not. Either way, I'll be okay. Because I've learned that my worth doesn't come from being needed by others. It comes from being true to myself and honoring the life Caroline and I built together. She'd be proud of me now. Not for how much I gave, but for what I finally refused to give away. My dignity, my self-respect, my right to be treated like a human being. The student closed her notebook, wiping tears from her eyes. Thank you for sharing that with me. I hope my project does justice to your story. Just remember, I said, boundaries aren't walls, they're gates. You control who gets in and who stays out. That's not selfishness, that's survival. After she left, I stayed in the cafe for a while, drinking my coffee and watching people pass by the windows. My phone buzzed. It was Frank, asking if I wanted to grab dinner and see a movie. I smiled and texted back yes. As I walked out of the library into the autumn sunshine, I passed the community bulletin board, where Caroline used to post notices for her book club. Someone had put up a quote that caught my attention. You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. I stood there reading it several times. Then I pulled out my phone and took a picture. Maybe I'd make that my next woodworking project. A carved wooden sign with those words. I could hang it in my apartment, a daily reminder of the hardest and most important lesson I ever learned. I walked to my car feeling lighter than I had in over a year. The grief over losing Caroline would never fully leave, but it had softened into something bearable, even beautiful. A reminder of love shared, not just loss endured, and the pain of Emma's betrayal, while still present, no longer defined me. I wasn't the man who cowered in his own home. I wasn't the father who sacrificed his dignity for the illusion of family. I was Barnett, a man who loved deeply, who lost profoundly, who was broken completely, and who put himself back together on his own terms. And that, I realized as I drove toward my apartment with the windows down and the radio playing, was more than enough. I'd survived the worst thing I could imagine, losing Caroline. I'd survived something I never expected, betrayal by my own daughter. And I was still here, still standing, still capable of joy and friendship and hope. The house was gone, but I'd never felt more at home in my own skin. The family I'd tried to preserve had fallen apart, but I'd found a new family in Frank, and the grief group, and the library volunteers. Life hadn't turned out the way I planned. But I was learning that sometimes the unplanned path leads somewhere better than you could have imagined. Caroline would have liked my new life. She'd always said I needed more friends, more hobbies, more joy. She'd be happy I was volunteering at the library she loved. She'd approve of Frank and our woodworking projects. She'd be proud that I finally stood up for myself. And maybe, someday, if Emma truly does the work of becoming trustworthy again, Caroline would want me to cautiously open that door. Not wide open, not without protection, but perhaps just a crack. Enough to see if genuine change has occurred. But that was a decision for future Barnett. Present Barnett had a movie to catch with Frank, and birdhouses to build, and stories to write, and a life to live. A life that was fully, completely, and finally his own. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to choose between protecting yourself and maintaining a relationship with someone you love? How did you navigate that impossible decision? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your stories and perspective. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength in the hardest moments of life. Share this with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to choose yourself, even when it feels impossible. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that you deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, no matter who the other person is. Take care of yourself, and remember that boundaries are an act of self-love, not selfishness.